Well, all right. Jen, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I think people have been able to kind of get into the room, and I would imagine people are going to continue joining us. But I think it's good to get started.
Sounds good.
Awesome. And again, thanks everybody for joining us today as we dive into really the importance of a work-life balance, as I think it's a really important topic to discuss. It's something everybody grapples with. And what's unique about this presentation is we'll actually get to hear directly from Jen Lee. And she is a PracticePanther user. She is a practitioner turned legal strategist who's really found success in her career by implementing these 4 tenets that we're going to be discussing today. And so before we kind of get rolling into some things, I wanted to start with just a few housekeeping notes for everybody. First, we are going to be recording this session. So feel free to take as many notes as you like, but know that you will get a copy of this recording. It'll be sent to the email that you registered with. Also, we have a Q&A box located at the bottom of the screen. So kind of throughout this presentation, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to kind of drop those into our Q&A. And we are really hoping to kind of reserve some time at the end to get to some of those questions. And so, yeah, I think let's go ahead and dive in. And those for those of us, or for those of you who are joining today who may not be as familiar with PracticePanther, I just wanted to kind of quickly bring everybody up to speed because PracticePanther is really that all-in-one legal practice management software that helps those solo, small, and medium firms really get more done in less time. We strive to really be the most intuitive software on the market because you're in it every single day. It should be pretty to look at and it should be easy to use. And so within PracticePanther, we provide the ability to offer, seamless case management, whether you are on the go or in your office. It can link your contacts and your matters and all those important details. You can automate your workflows when you're needing to set those conditional tasks, if you have any reminders, and even some custom tags for your workflows. You can kind of communicate with clients in unique ways through our native e-signature and through two-way texting, all kind of built within the software. And then you can really go digital with your billing and payment options kind of moving forward to get paid a little bit faster. And so that's kind of a quick overlook at PracticePanther. And then thought we'd kind of dive into who are the speakers today, and know that reach out anytime. We're both available on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect, after this. Be sure you mention that you met us here in the webinar, and we'd love to connect. But my name is Libby Luff, and I am the Strategic Partnerships Manager here at PracticePanther. And that ultimately means I get the opportunity to collaborate with state and local bars, with legal organizations across the country, and with great partners like Jen here to really help support and educate lawyers on ways they can efficiently and effectively run their practice. So I come to you with over 15 years of experience in sales and marketing and operations, which ultimately means I love to turn those strategic challenges into untapped opportunities. And joining us today is Jen Lee, and who she will be pulling kind of from her resources and really how she invests her time among family, friends, colleagues, work, and even finds time to kind of give back to her community. So Jen, I'll let you kind of take it from here and introduce yourself and your Lawyer Success Network.
Sure. So my name is Jen Lee. I am a formerly practicing attorney, and I've kind of transitioned into being a legal strategist and consultant because I enjoyed talking about the legal side and the practice management side and how to make everything work. And so I recently successfully transitioned into that practice from having a successful law firm. So I am really happy to be here today. Lawyer Success Network is a group that I created to help lawyers work outside the box, create the legal marketplace of the future, come up with new ideas for practice models, for reoccurring income. Passive income is a big thing out there. And how do we create all of those things? And so I always joke that our motto is people who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. And that came out of a lot of my experiences as an early attorney in the bankruptcy world, bankruptcy practice. So Lawyer Success Network is my baby, and I really enjoy working with lawyers and figuring out how to make their lives successful and their practices successful as well. So
That's fantastic. And I thought we'd kind of maybe go over your journey a little bit on where you got started and how you've kind of transitioned over the years to where you are now, which is really, exciting to kind of to sell that practice and then get into the consulting and strategist journey that you kind of, I don't know if that's something you had from college or if it kind of evolved over time.
it evolved over time. And I think a lot of it, and going through this journey, has really been, how do I break out of what lawyers typically think they should do? And so when I graduated from law school in 2009, I went to law school knowing I would open my own practice, because I do not play well with not play well with others. I don't report to authority very well. I always have new ideas. And a lot of companies, a lot of law firms, they don't like new ideas. And I was always a hassle. So I opened my own law firm, and I did the traditional law firm, bankruptcy law firm model, 2010 to 2013. And then I started to break the mold, and I started breaking out into what could this be if I did it my way versus what the legal world expects. I started charging for consultations. Yes, as a bankruptcy attorney, technically my clients are supposed to be broke. I started charging. It was the best thing that I ever did at the time. It was hugely successful, and I really enjoy now teaching other lawyers to do that. And then I started ramping up my practice, hired an associate, a part-time associate. I started seeing more lawyers who wanted help. So I unofficially started doing this in 2016, helping lawyers, and really enjoyed that part. And in 2018, I joked to Libby that, like, in a fit of rage one night, I got tired of hearing that's not how lawyers do things. And that's when I created Lawyer Success Network. And so it really has been a journey in figuring out, like, what the practice of law could be, and how we should be treating lawyers, and how lawyers should be thinking about their businesses. So I created this one Sunday night. I totally remember the Facebook post that made me create Lawyer Success Network, talking about that doesn't work because lawyers don't do things like that. It was to do with networking, actually. That networking doesn't work for bankruptcy attorneys, was what I was told. And then 2021, COVID hit, everything expanded. I'd been hiring attorneys in the firm. I hired a business manager, outsourced marketing, and we'll get into a lot of those tools that I used. But I did move out of California in 2021 for the better life for my family. I have a daughter with special needs, and the schools in California were not receptive to the needs which she needed for her education. And so I'm originally from North Dakota, and we moved back home to North Dakota in 2021 for the better life there. And it was a great move. I am so happy with how things have done and gone. And then 2022, I transitioned my law practice to my partners, and they took it away, having a great time helping people with bankruptcy using my model. And I'm working with other lawyers now. So that's where we're at now, transitioning.
Well, that's really exciting. Yeah, a lot happened even in these last couple of years, I think, to kind of get you where you are today. And it seems like you found some key moments kind of throughout this professional journey where you wanted to do and be more, which is really exciting versus, fitting into the place you need to fit.
Yes.
It's nice to kind of break that mold, and knowing that you kind of tried on probably a lot of different things, maybe even along the way, and kind of seeing Jen's journey. We thought we'd kind of take a moment before we kind of get too deep into things, launch this poll here real quick. Sorry, let me get to the polls here. Too many screens, right? All right. So are you guys seeing that poll pop up?
Yes, I see it.
Fantastic. And well, these are all anonymous, so you can kind of see kind of how people are voting, but we just really kind of wanted to take the pulse. Everyone approaches a work-life balance a little bit differently, and your ultimate goal is going to be to find really what works for you, and not necessarily what works for your friends or for your colleagues. And taking a look at Jen's life, I think she might be in that little 5 category, currently living the dream. And I'm happy to see there, got some 4s in there, which are really great. You're juggling it all with a little style, but I hear you on the work-life balance. What's that? That's in the last kind of couple of years, I've really taken a focus on the work-life balance and how to kind of better organize my day and things like that. So super excited for everybody to be part of this and just see kind of where everybody lands, because it's good to know that you're not in it by yourself. Everybody is kind of waiting and struggling through, or maybe just really killing it too. So just kind of wanted to get the pulse of everybody joining us today. So I appreciate you guys participating. And it looks like the juggling it all with a little style has the most of them. So that's really exciting to see today. And so I thought we'd kind of get into just what our discussion is going to be about. We're going to deconstruct that work-life balance, as a lot of people really have an idea of really what this looks like. But the way you currently define it, it may make it harder for you to achieve that schedule and career you're looking for. We're going to go over some of those top challenges that lawyers face when it comes to that work-life balance, and some of those, you may be able to resonate with. Like I said, you're not alone in this, and which can be kind of reassuring at times. Then we're going to get into those 4 tenets that impact a balanced career. And we're going to really break these down into 3 sections today. We're going to first talk about kind of best practices for each tenet. We're going to then kind of head over to Jen to talk about her advice and her approach. And then we're going to talk about some of these systems used to kind of implement this balance. And then we're kind of wrap the conversation today with steps you can do to kind of reach your goals with that work-life balance. So let's kind of start it off, break it down with the concept of what the work-life balance is, and explore what it means by dissecting the common misconceptions, as well as maybe 4 areas you need to consider to find that balance moving forward. And so the first one is, that misconception of balance, and that is really that your life fits neatly into 2 categories. You got work and you got life, and they totally balance out, right? Evenly on a scale. Probably looks a little bit like this for everybody. Everybody out there having a wonderfully balanced life, I hope. So what we're thinking about is this kind of approach is not exactly accurate. It's not always equal in your life. So if you're trying to kind of balance things like this in 2 easy buckets, we're afraid you might kind of struggle with the idea of a work-life balance. And instead, we want to have you consider approaching it as an equilibrium, because with your work-life balance, it's going to change over the years. It's going to alter. It's going to look different at age 25 than it does at age 45 or even 65. All areas of your life really contribute to this balance. And so when you combine your efforts, your achievements, your personal satisfaction, it helps you achieve that overall equilibrium. And it means that hopefully you're a little bit more content with your professional progress and your alignment of your career and life goals, versus maybe a balance which feels like it's maybe struggling or juggling more daily responsibilities. I want to think of it more as an overarching state you want to achieve in life and in your career. And so to achieve this kind of equilibrium, there are really 4 areas of balance that you really have to consider in how you approach these areas. First one, client advocacy. This is going to be really core to the lawyer's professional responsibility. It involves representing and defending the interests of your clients, providing legal advice, and really ensuring your clients' rights are protected. One must efficiently handle caseloads and communication with clients. You got to deliver those quality services without sacrificing the demands of the areas kind of in life. And the client advocacy, I think everybody can kind of agree, that's really why you want to become a lawyer. You're here to kind of help people. And maybe not as much fun, but a very important part of balance is going to be really that business side and that firm management. And this really encompasses the admin and the business aspects of law. It includes tasks like staffing and budgeting, marketing, and strategic planning. For those of you who are in leadership or management, you're overseeing the entire operation and have even greater responsibilities of reaching and maintaining goals. And so, that firm management is going to be just as important as your client advocacy. And then we're going to run into that personal enrichment, which, for me, probably my favorite. Hopefully it's your favorite as well, because this really focuses on the individual well-being. And it includes interests and hobbies, and even your mental and physical health, I think, should kind of fall into this category. When you prioritize your personal enrichment, it's crucial for maintaining that work-life balance. You got to take time for some self-care. You got to pursue some hobbies and interests, even some continuous learning, to really avoid that burnout and promote a more fulfilling life. And then this last area of balance that we're going to touch on is your family. And this refers to kind of the commitments and those responsibilities really within your family And it includes maybe a partner, a child or children, other loved ones. What's really cool is everyone's family, it looks a little bit different, and that's great. What you really want to focus on, though, is being present for your family. For those events, you want to set those boundaries so you can find that quality time to spend with your loved ones. And so I'll kind of hand it on over to Jen so she can reference some of those challenges in balancing our realities.
Thanks, Libby. So I really dislike the work-life balance like name itself, because everyone pictures this equal, like you said, like this equal, like my work should be half of my life and my personal life should be, it's all intertwined. And how you balance that out is really individualized. And so here are some of the challenges that I see attorneys encountering. When I represented attorneys in bankruptcy, I saw a lot of the same issues over and over again, because practice management, no one teaches lawyers how to run a business for the most part. There are some law schools who are getting better about doing some practice management, and the next gen bar is coming and all kinds of things like that. But no one teaches us how to run a business. They throw us out there with a law license and here we are. So that's a huge challenge in understanding that. Time management, there is always more to do. There will never be a time when your to-do list is done. And so prioritizing and time management is a huge challenge for all of us. Client expectations. The practice of law would be great if we didn't have any clients, right? Because they're always driving us crazy. So the increased demands, changing dynamics, the ability for them to contact us 24/7, a lot of those expectations are challenging for attorneys to even deal with. Marketing and business development. We need to have clients coming in the door in order to make money, to make all these other things work. And we were not taught that either. We're not taught about marketing. We're not taught about biz dev. We're not taught about how networking works for the most part. And so that's a huge struggle and a challenge for your time. Strategic planning. So most attorneys that I went out solo with, 15 years ago, basically one day just opened up their door and hung a shingle. There was no planning, there was no resources, and that creates a very stressful environment. And I think with a little bit of planning, the balance comes from a lot of the planning and tools that are out there. So those are my top challenges from an attorney standpoint. And then we have a fun meme. I love these attorney memes on Facebook. What my friends think I do, what society thinks I do, and what I really do is cry. Hopefully that's not happening, that you're not, depressed, because I would say mental health challenges are a big part of this and the balance and what we're looking at. So this isn't funny, but it's also very true. Like you have to balance all of these things of what people think versus how you react to them and what position you put yourself in as an attorney and a person in your life. So
yeah, and I would imagine that airbender, that probably is what clients mostly think you do. It's just all magic, right?
It's all magic. I have a magic wand. I can make anything go away. Yes.
Oh, awesome. So I think we can kind of get into these 4 tenets, really impact your balanced career moving forward. And just a kind of a quick reminder for each of these tenets, we again want to break them down into best practices, the insights from Jen, and then those systems to really consider moving forward. And so this first one is going to be really big. It's setting boundaries by creating those clear policies. And 3 best practices to really implement that will help you set boundaries crucial to achieving a work-life balance. And now remember, these office policies, they're going to help delineate when and how work-related activities take place. They're going to establish expectations and guidelines, and hopefully, provide you with a little bit more structure for both you and your staff. And so that first one is going to be your communications policy. And this is probably, Jen, I don't know if you'd agree, probably one of the more important ones, how you're communicating both with your staff and with your clients, and clearly defining that policy is going to be important, because by setting these communication boundaries, you really help ensure that uninterrupted focus during critical work hours, and then guaranteeing still some timely responses to those urgent matters that do come up. This policy should specify preferred methods of communication, even response times and expectations. And even I would recommend designating some no contact hours to really kind of protect your personal life. So if there's maybe, a couple hours during the day or during the week where that you're going to be safe from, people reaching out, clients reaching out, staff reaching out, and having that time is going to be really important. And then setting those payment expectations, outlining your firm's billing practices, payment terms, methods. That's really going to be important on the onset of any kind of relationship with clients moving forward, because it really sets the tone for your financial transparency. And it really avoids that payment related stress, probably for you and for your clients. And another side perk, it can help with cash flow, especially when going with those digital payment options. With the payment expectations, you can detail, kind of like we talked about, accepted payment methods is one of them, your invoicing schedules, consequences for paying late. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's good for your clients to know kind of what happens there. And maybe that'll prevent them from being late. And then you have those timeline estimations. And this is going to be important to provide that realistic and transparent projections for clients. It helps reduce maybe some of those last minute rushes and mitigate that undue pressure that's going to put on your work-life balance. Encompasses factors like case complexity, your court schedules, potential delays, all of which kind of offers a clearer understanding of the overall legal process. And to be honest, I think there's a side benefit too. You really can build trust with your client by really laying out these expectations in advance. So they really kind of rely you on the expert, and they know exactly what's going to be happening. They won't have kind of random things pop up on unexpected. And so I think that's a really great benefit too. And so I'll let kind of Jen talk about some of those advice that she has from best practices.
So the best practices here, and I would say communication, the number one bar complaint is that their attorney's not communicating with them. And so I think we think we're over communicating sometimes, and we're not. So if you have a process, and I always say an onboarding documentation, a client expectations handbook. Now, walk it back a second. A lot of clients aren't going to read volumes and volumes of information. A client expectations handbook can be infographics. It can be a video that you explain how your process works and how best to communicate with you. It doesn't have to be a graphically designed handbook that you hand out with everything. I've seen some great examples in Canva that people send a link to, and that's what client expectations are. In the client expectations, you should be telling them when they can contact you, how they should contact you, your business hours. If your business hours are Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 12 to 2, tell them that. And you can totally have those business hours, by the way, if that's what you want your work hours to be. That's how you get to the balance part, is setting those hours that you want, not what people expect you to have. You just have to communicate it. Describe your process on your website. One of the best things that I hear from clients is they parrot back stuff from my website. So I know they looked at my website. They know how our process works. They know our model. So if you describe your process on your website, you're not giving away anything. You're not giving away legal advice. You're not giving away, you're just describing your process, and it makes them feel more comfortable. Many legal clients have never talked to an attorney before. They don't know what to expect, and they don't know what's appropriate. So the more you explain and educate, the more comfortable they feel with you, and the less stressed they will be and blow up your phone and email all day, every day. Attract the types of clients you want by speaking their language. So I do a lot of this looking at lawyer websites these days and trying to figure out who their ideal client is. And sometimes it's really hard to tell because they're using big legal jargony words. And so the types of clients you want to put on your website and in your communication, on your YouTube, in your client portal, use the words that they use to describe their situation, not what you think the problem is. FAQs. FAQs are huge. You can have them in written. You could have a YouTube channel. They are the easiest things in the world to do because you get asked these questions all day, every day. And if you could save time and have more time for other things by not answering the exact same question over and over again, make a video about it or write a blog post and just have your FAQs up there, because I guarantee someone will find that then and they won't call you for a silly question. And then design your client onboarding process and test it. Make sure that what clients are experiencing from initial contact to their initial appointment to retainer, make sure that they are experiencing basically a work of art. Your client onboarding process should be a work of art. Make it so that it's easy for them to pay you. Make it so that it's easy for them to sign up, sign a retainer, and contact you as needed, because that will make the stress of running a law firm a lot less.
Yeah, and these are all just really great pieces of advice. I love the one that if you want to do it, just communicate it. That's going to be huge. I love kind of taking that approach, especially on kind of getting your work-life balance. And 100% agree with Jen on, putting these processes on your site and putting these FAQs and things like that on your site. Because the secondary bonus, the marketer in me, that's how people are going to find you anymore. That's if it's not a referral, they're probably going to Google and they're typing in a couple words to find you. And, you want to be found. And when you add these processes, when you add these FAQs of anything you're answering regularly, that it could be another really great way for clients to find you.
And even if it is a referral, I guarantee they're going to your website to check you out before they call you. So
100%. Yeah, I agree with that. And then we're going to have Jen kind of just talk about some of the systems she's created when it comes to these clear policies. And I'll probably have a few questions for her. And as we mentioned, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A as well.
So setting and coming up with systems can be hard because we're not taught really how to do that. And I did a lot of trial and error, and I'm hoping to save a lot of attorneys some headaches by not having to go through the same trial and error. PracticePanther, the client portal for PracticePanther, was one of my key ways that I was able to ramp up my firm because clients like a place where they can upload documents. We were losing things in email. We were emailing things that shouldn't have been emailed. I like the secure portal factor when we're sending tax returns and things like that through a portal. And clients also like it because they can see then the communication back and forth. I know a lot of my clients, like if I look at their phone, their notifications is like 482,000 notifications on there. They don't know what they have, but if they can log into their portal, they see it right there. So the client portal is one of the factors in me switching to PracticePanther 6 years ago or so. And the workflows were another factor. So you can set up all kinds of workflows. There's all kinds of integrations with PracticePanther or any case management system, but having workflows was one of my reasons for switching to PracticePanther because tasks, you can assign clients tasks and they have a due date. And I come from a bankruptcy world, so my clients are very stressed. They're due date driven and they won't do things until the last minute anyway. And so having a task set up where they see, okay, I need to submit X, Y, and Z by December 3rd, and then I need to do this by December 14th, that makes them feel in control and they don't call and ask a lot of crazy questions. So again, the stress level is being balanced out with the workflows. I love the tasks and the workflows in PracticePanther. And then digital payments. I know there are a lot of attorneys out there who are still only accepting cash or check for payments. They won't take credit cards because it costs money. Yes, it costs money. You get paid a lot faster and the money's in your account. Your cash flow improves dramatically if you just take digital payments. And the other thing with digital payment, just increase your rates. So if you don't want to pay 2.9% for your credit card transactions and 1% for your ACH, then just increase your rates by 5% and it's all built in there. So it's not something where you're giving up any money. All you're doing is improving the ability for you to get paid. So
that's awesome. And kind of talking about the client portal, how do you think that's really improved, getting maybe more time back? What did that client portal really allow you to do when it comes to kind of connecting with your clients?
So before the client portal, it would take months for people to get me documents. They would either try to email them and scan them or fax them, of all things, or drop them off at the office. And the client portal made it go from like a 3 to 6 month process sometimes with clients to like a 2 to maybe 6 week process, depending on the client. And so having a business manager who runs all of my client communications has been helpful, but it's also saved her a lot of time too, with not having to repeatedly ask for things and repeatedly say, okay, we didn't get that. And they say, oh, I emailed it. Can't find an email. It's in the portal. They can see it. So it saved a lot of time.
Yeah. And I'm kind of in agreement. I don't want to call in every time I need to know like my bank balance. Be like, let me log into the app and check it out. I think that's, that self-service that a lot of people really like, and maybe it helps reduce a few of those phone calls to your office.
Yes.
Are there any kind of common tasks that you find that your clients are completing in these workflows? What exactly are you kind of assigning them to do?
Yeah. So for example, one of our workflows that we have is when a client is going to do a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, we have a Chapter 7 bankruptcy workflow that we just click in PracticePanther. And what that does is it assigns out all the tasks automatically to them and emails to them. So it'll say their first tasks are to complete our questionnaire and to send pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements through the secure portal. So I'll give them each of those tasks and a deadline. And so that's our primarily like our favorite workflow, because as soon as we do that, they start uploading and they start filling out things. And then it'll tell them, okay, your very last task is to complete the credit counseling course, which is required to file for bankruptcy. And so we know when they've been checking those things off and they get to that, they know they're almost ready and we know they're almost ready. So it makes it really easy to give them the timeline that we were just talking about on the previous slide, of set those timelines and expectations. So
Fantastic. We did have just two quick questions come in. One was on security issues for the client portal. And I can definitely speak to this a little bit, but this is full encryption. We use the Microsoft Azure cloud. So we protect in transit and at rest. So it's fully encrypted. And so Jen, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add on the security of the client portals and how your clients kind of appreciate the portal.
yeah, I don't know the technical, I just know that it's secure because that was one of the things I looked into when I first started doing it. It's way more secure than email. I've had clients with their emails hacked, sending me tax returns and things like that. And I don't recommend that. So I'm pretty confident with anything can be hacked, putting that out there, that there's nothing in the world that's 100% safe, but I feel much more comfortable with the client portal than I do email and texting. So
yeah, and also kind of one person asked about workflows they use it for internal use, and is there training on how to use workflow with the client? And you can absolutely look up training on the PracticePanther website. We have kind of support sites, and within, if you're a PracticePanther user, within there, you can actually pull in support, and they can actually send you webinars and things like that as well. So within the actual app, you can reach out to support that way. Awesome. And then when it comes to kind of digital payments, when did you kind of start making that switch? Is that a new switch for you and your firm, or is that something that you kind of decided a couple years ago? I didn't know kind of how that switch.
No, I took digital payments from the beginning.
Yep.
And it was debit cards. As a bankruptcy attorney, I can't take credit cards. There's a whole issue that we have to be really careful with digital payments. Some practice areas don't have that issue, but I took them from the beginning because I knew from the very beginning that I had to make it easy for them to pay, was how I looked at it.
Yeah, I agree. And considering I pay my mortgage from my mobile phone, you want to kind of get in with the time. And if banks are doing it, and utilities are doing it, it's good to kind of offer the same kind of access.
Yep. And we do encourage ACH. It's less expensive for ACH payments. And we do encourage that because then we know that it came from a checking account versus a credit card for bankruptcy payments. But we take debit or credit cards from family members and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Well, then we'll kind of get into this second tenet, which is going to be time management productivity hacks. So this will be obviously a big contributor to your work-life balance, as it's essential for boosting productivity, reducing stress, and prioritizing your tasks. These hacks include that flexible work schedule. Jen kind of prefaced that in the beginning. If you want to work, 12 to 2, work 12 to 2. Empower your staff to adapt those work hours they're looking for. And it really allows you to harness that peak productivity hours, reduce overall burnout and foster a happier, more motivated legal team. And then you have that time blocking, which is a technique to schedule very specific blocks of time for focused, uninterrupted work on typically larger projects, but really any task will do. This kind of helps lawyers really give you enough time for the essential tasks on your plate, really giving them the attention that they deserve. It helps with accountability, encourages better time utilization, and really promotes a more organized and structured workday. Time blocking is definitely something I do, especially for my larger tasks. And it's really nice to, once you kind of get that notification, for the next 30 minutes or for the next hour, you're really kind of heads down on that project. And then the last one, it may seem pretty straightforward, prioritize your tasks. It's like, yeah, but so much comes in at you on a daily basis, from emails, phone calls, texting. If you use any kind of communication channel, practice management and stuff, there's a lot of different information that is coming your way. And so kind of prioritizing a must do, should do, can wait kind of a category list. It helps you make a little bit more informed decisions and not just necessarily fly off and answer questions immediately, because they're easy to answer. Sometimes you just want to break away and be like, oh, I can do this real quick. And it doesn't need to be done for 3 weeks. So it's really great to kind of prioritize your tasks to really that legal work that takes precedent. And then hopefully it kind of reduces that last minute rush as well. And so
I will say on the flexible work schedule there are a lot of firms are going to shorter than 40-hour work weeks. I've seen 32 and 35-hour work weeks recently. And it also, studies have shown that people get just as much done in 32 hours as they do in 40 hours because they're wasting 8 hours of brain space trying to do all the things that they can actually get done through time blocking and prioritizing. So I thought that was interesting to see.
I'm here to vote for a 32-hour work week.
Right.
We'll start that poll next.
Me too.
And so, so go ahead.
No, it's okay. This is one of my favorite topics is of the billable hours. So when we're talking about how many hours you work, a lot of lawyers are trained by the hour. They bill everything by the hour. So your income is capped. If you bill by the hour, you could only make as much as your income has. And so balancing and doing some of this work-life balance type stuff, if you go beyond the billable hour, that's one of that time tracking and time hacking that you can use to do that. So you can do milestone billing and flat fees, project billing, hybrid models. I have all kinds of fun working with law firms to figure out how to do that. And PracticePanther is great at different invoicing and billing too. We use PracticePanther for billing on all of these different models. Always be evaluating your profit margins, know your numbers for each service that you're offering so that you can make more money and spend less time doing things. If you already offer flat fees, I would encourage you to stop thinking in terms of how much the time something will take. Your flat fee should be based on the value of the service, not the time it takes you to do it, because then you're just hourly billing, just calling it something fancy like flat fees. So, and then the other thing I would say for beyond, charge for consultations. I'm a big fan of charging for consults for all practice areas. I know that's controversial, but that will help you also with balancing time. It gives you time back because you won't have tire kickers and people who are just looking for a free consult wasting your time. So.
Yeah. And I love that kind of taking the approach on the flat fee is the value of the service versus your hourly billing, which is so right. I know, a lot of people kind of utilize it as a way to mitigate hourly billing, but to utilize it more as a value of the service that you provide, I think that's a really great approach to going beyond that billable hour. And so let's get into some of these systems for time management that we can kind of talk about today.
The time tracking, I'm still a fan of time tracking. You should still know where your time is going. It just doesn't have to be like what you put onto an invoice necessarily. So I'm a big fan of time tracking. We use PracticePanther for all of our time tracking. Everyone puts their time in. So I don't know if you have any tips there, Libby.
Well, it's just nice to not have to keep track of every, 10th of an hour and you're rounding and things like that. So I agree. Time tracking is so important for what you're doing. And there's so many different ways kind of within PracticePanther that you can do it, whether you're I want to do it right now, as I'm working, which I love those lawyers. Hopefully you're not one of the ones that wait until the end of the month. You might be losing out on some of your time tracking ability. But I know a number of people who kind of keep an open tab that kind of, when you add multiple time entries, they just kind of keep that tab open all day and just add time entries as they go. So I've definitely seen a couple people take that in a different approach in different ways, but they really kind of like that time tracking ability within PracticePanther.
And then calendaring, really important in general to have calendaring because you don't want to miss deadlines. You don't want to miss court hearings. You don't want to miss those kinds of things. But it also can help you internally with who's working on what projects that are due and that kind of thing. So calendar, I know it's a time management system, but electronic calendaring is probably one of the easiest things to implement and start adding things to calendars. So.
Yeah, and I think even knowing kind of your coworker, your fellow coworker schedules too. There's a place within PracticePanther you can kind of break out the calendars and see what everybody's working on and stuff like that too. And I think sometimes that can be just as important.
And that automation, I'm a big fan of automation. You can use PracticePanther, which integrates with all kinds of things. Zapier, I'm a big fan of using zaps between different calendaring. And if you have online scheduling, you can zap that directly into PracticePanther. It creates Dropbox folders. There's all kinds of things you can do with automation to make your process, also goes into your client experience, to make your process more efficient on your end. So I'm a big fan of automation.
Yeah, is there kind of any specific area of automations that's helped, whether it's, intake or billing or just tasks in general? Where do you find that automation really coming in and making a big play?
So intake has been great because the way we have it set up is we have our online scheduler. Once a client makes an appointment on our online scheduler, it automatically creates a client record for them in PracticePanther. And then it also creates their Dropbox folder because we have the Dropbox folder PracticePanther integration activated. And so just having all of that initial setup done has been great because then we don't have to go in and add them and then send out a reminder email. It all gets done automatically through that intake. So I think scheduling was the biggest like game changer for automation. So
And then they did have a question. Which online scheduler do you use? I don't
we
know.
use Acuity.
Yep.
So yeah, is our favorite. I've used Calendly as well, but Acuity is what we have set up now directly into PracticePanther. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people use Acuity, and that's we've used that before as well. So, and then just kind of a quick question on that time tracking is, how do you decide, or how long maybe a particular project should take? Do you kind of think about it in that approach as well?
Yeah. So what I did in the past is as I was building up my firm, this was part of my journey here, was I would track time to see how long a normal case would take. So when I would have a normal issue come in, we had time tracking for that. And then as time, you always have to evaluate. So as time goes by, we would compare those. And if we had a really complicated case come in, we could start spotting those from the beginning and say, hey, this is going to take a lot longer, more legal, more lawyer time involved, that kind of thing. So you always have to be comparing it to what you did before. But you can get a pretty good idea with time tracking what your typical timeline looks like for cases. And it also helps you inform the client then what it's going to look like.
Awesome. And then we had the same question kind of in Acuity.
Yeah.
It says it does not create an automatic client profile on PracticePanther. Any tips on creating an automatic profile? That might be a Zaps.
It is a Zap. Yep. So we use Zapier to connect, and Acuity then zaps it into PracticePanther. So Zapier.com.
Yep. And if you head to our integration pages, the Zapier should be there as well. You can kind of read a little bit more about it.
Yep.
Fantastic. And so we're going to get into the third tenet today, which is creating that dream team, and I don't have to tell anybody on this call, an amazing staff is going to help all aspects, right? You're going to have, it helps you manage those workloads. It brings that specialized expertise, which is going to be really great, and provide some of that flexibility to adapt to those changing needs and demands. As we've all kind of seen here in the last couple of years, especially with AI, there's going to be a lot of things that are coming in. And so having a dream team to kind of help you manage it all is going to be amazing. And so a couple different ways you can do that is you have those part and full-time staffers. And there's a definite advantage to having part and full-time team because they're invested in your practice. The full-time employees offer in-depth knowledge, maybe some historical knowledge of your firm's processes too. So that's really great. Part-timers can help manage those fluctuating workloads. And both of them, like we mentioned, kind of helps you build a team that really shares your firm's values and overall your firm's objectives. And so if you're not really maybe needing that full or part-time help, you can kind of look into those freelancers or even a consultant strategist or anything like that. And these offer that flexibility on expertise on kind of those project specific needs. And these are external experts who provide really that fresh perspective. You're hiring them for specialized skills, and they usually offer a cost-effective solution without that long-term commitment, which can be really nice. And then we have the virtual assistants as well. And they're a great resource for lawyers who are looking, to really get additional admin support and kind of delegate some of those time-consuming admin tasks. They're great at handling phone calls, schedules, email management, research, and other kind of admin responsibilities that free up then your valuable time to really focus in on that legal work. Plus, those virtual assistants, they work remote. So there's flexibility in and of there. You have scalability options, money saving options as well, making them really a practical choice for managing your day-to-day at the law firm. And so I'm going to pass it over to Jen, and she can kind of talk about setting those expectations.
Yes. So staff. So, and a lot of attorneys don't necessarily want to be a manager. They don't want to manage staff, and that's okay. That's where Libby was talking about the virtual assistants. That was one of my best hires, was a 1099 virtual assistant who runs their own company. But I always, so you can replace staff in here with any kind of help you have, but treat them like adults. The biggest complaint I get from any industry these days is that people feel micromanaged, and that's not what the generations these days are looking for. They're not looking for tons of micromanage. They want feedback, but they don't want to feel like they're being treated like children.
Mhm.
And flexible shorter work weeks, I talked about that earlier. Productivity actually improves with flexible and shorter work weeks. And that was fascinating to me when I started seeing those studies that showed 32 hours was just as good as 40 hours. Set expectations of how and work gets done. What I have seen on a lot of law firms is they'll hire someone and say, okay, go do your job. But there's no expectations set. There's no, okay, when does work get done? What's the timeline look like? Are there deadlines? How do we track those? So setting all those expectations and having a good onboarding process before you have a staff member is a good idea. But you can also create it as you go. Don't be afraid to hire someone because you don't have the process. Just record it as you go so that you have it for the next time. And procedures and processes are time consuming, but it's worth it to have them put into place, even if you're doing it as you go. You don't have to recreate the wheel or anything like that. And then I always kind of joke, hire slow and fire fast. If someone's not working out, don't try to keep massaging a situation that doesn't work. But hire slow, I mean, make sure you're ready for it. Make sure you have a few systems in place and you're ready to have a staff member. And if you're not ready for staff, freelancers and virtual assistants are a great way to go with that. So
yeah, I really kind of like how you talked about setting those expectations and really even those procedures, because otherwise you're hiring people who are going to run the law firm how they want to run it and not how you want them to run it, which can be a little scary, dangerous. You want to make sure it's all on the up and up and that they're doing it the way that you want it to be done. And setting those expectations is going to be key to that. So I think that's great advice. And then we're going to get into the systems to kind of build that all-star lineup. And I know Jen's got some really great suggestions here.
Yeah. So for communication tools with clients, the client portal is how we communicate with clients, and all team members that are brought on then interact generally with the clients in the client portal. It just makes things so much easier. I know a lot of lawyers don't like texting. That's why PracticePanther has the great texting integration, the SMS integration on there. So don't text them from your personal phone so that they're texting you at midnight. That's a great way to ruin your work-life balance. And make sure that you have an internal place where you know things are being tracked. So communication is really important. Team members often feel alone, especially with the remote work. And so whatever tools, we've used Slack in the past as well, just to keep communication and talking between teams that are often in different states, in different offices and that kind of thing. Permission settings. So really important to know who has access to things. I just saw interesting post about someone who shared a Dropbox link and they didn't know that they shared the entire client's file with opposing counsel. And so make sure that you're being really careful about how you assign permissions. If your staff is assigning permissions on discovery or something like that, make sure they know how to do that and you have some controls in place. It can help your sanity, but it's also something to make sure you have a system for. Consultants and Indeed. So make sure that you're using resources that are out there. There are consultants, there are freelance legal assistants, there are some great services that will help you find good staff. I know that's a huge problem these days, is finding workers. And so I've made some great connections out there because there's just such a need for great staff. And being flexible, like the more flexible you are. I just had someone who quit their job because their job was requiring them to go in the office 4 days a week. And they're like, I don't want to do that anymore. That's not my thing. And so being flexible and finding workers and consultants who can work with your business are really important. Mm-hmm. And networking and bar associations, leverage your professional network, find the referrals, get advice, how with your hiring, with your team, use those networks out there and ask for advice from people. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And I agree on the communication tools. There's a lot of different ways I think you can communicate and just really get out of emails, I think email is definitely something that you can utilize, but there are so many different ways you can kind of communicate within PracticePanther. We have those direct messages and those secure messages, and texting, kind of like you said. But I've even seen law firms who utilize, they create tasks as communication, which is a great way to kind of send something over to somebody without putting another email in their inbox, and even adding notes, into a contact or a matter of if you're missing specific documents or things like that. These are great little note fields are great for that kind of information to share, so that everybody is aware of what's going on. And I also kind of wanted to kind of touch base on those permission settings, because that is huge, as Jen mentioned. And kind of within PracticePanther, you have a couple different options in so many different areas, who can create, who can edit, who can delete, who can view even. So, definitely make sure you're getting in there to your permission settings and setting those. My question to you, Jen, is where do you find your power players? Where's the staff you can't live without?
So my first two attorney hires came from the Bar Association. And what it was they knew I was looking. So every time a new attorney would come in, they would say, "Hey, are you looking for a job? We know someone who's looking." So it was networking. And then another attorney hire came from, they wanted to, it was consulting. They wanted to consult with me on how to build their practice. And then when we started talking, she didn't really want her own practice. She just didn't know what else to do. And so I hired her instead of consulting with her. So it's networking is how I found most of mine.
Fantastic. Good
Yeah.
advice there. So, all right, let's get into this last tenet and we'll kind of keep moving forward. So delegation. So good to delegate. It optimizes your efficiency, reduces errors. It empowers your staff even. These alone provide so many benefits for your firm. You have that collaborative environment. It frees up higher value tasks and really kind of, again, adapt to those industry standards. All while, really importantly, still managing solid client services. And so determining your processes is going to be huge. Assess every step of your law firm's process by documenting and streamlining these. You can pinpoint tasks that require legal expertise versus those that can be efficiently handled either by a support staff or even automation. It's really that first step towards efficient resource allocation. And I really want to emphasize, once you've determined your processes, physically write them down. Have them so that they can be referenced, they can be improved upon, and they can even be used for training, which could be a really great asset. And then you have automation, which kind of delegates those repetitive rule-based tasks to technology solutions. And so automation, once you evaluate your processes, you can identify tasks that can be automated. If document generation is a great one, intake, reminders, even maybe data analysis. By assessing these needs, you can really optimize your delegation strategies. And then finally, we kind of have that team feedback, where I want to kind of say that delegation is really a two-way process, and communication is kind of that two-way process. It regularly discuss tasks and processes with your team can really help refine your approach. When you improve the process, you ensure these assignments then align with team members, their skills and their expertise, their interests and things like that. So you're aligning all that information, and getting good staff feedback creates that kind of collaborative work environment that empowers your team. It gets that really solid buy-in. And trust me, your staff has insight. You just have to ask. And so I'm going to turn over some tips to Jen here.
That's a really good lead in. So choose the right people. So best practices here. I would rather have someone who maybe not have a legal background, but has a great attitude and feedback cycle versus I could train them on the legal. A lot of times I didn't want them to the legal stuff anyway, because they learned the traditional way of doing things and I didn't want that. But so choosing the right people is really important. I often get pushback on this because everyone says there are no people, so I can't choose the right people. You have to work at it. You have to find the right people to work in your firm that fits your model, that fits how you want to treat clients. It should be a holistic right person, not they can technically do the job, is how I look at delegation, because you have to trust them. Mm-hmm. Clear instructions. I cannot tell you how many times I've had someone try to delegate a task and didn't tell them how to do it. They didn't tell them how they want the task completed. It's okay. You have to be clear about things. Set deadlines. Don't assume that something's going to get done on your timeline if you don't tell them what that timeline is. And then at the very beginning, when you're starting to delegate things, it can be scary. Like I'm holding on to this stuff because it's important to me and I don't want to give it to someone else. Monitor progress quick check-ins just to see how they're doing, because sometimes they'll get stuck and they won't tell you because they're afraid. It's early on in the relationship and they're a little scared. So it's okay to do quick check-ins as long as you're not being like accusatory, like, where is this? I need this right now type attitude. Give them the necessary tools and resources. I had a client who wanted their law firm employees to do all kinds of work with clients, wouldn't give them any technology tools, wouldn't give them a website, wouldn't give them practice management. If you don't give them necessary tools and resources like practice management and PracticePanther, you're setting them up to fail. And then document processes that work well. Once you find something, you're like, aha, I've got it, eureka, this is cool. Document it. And it's okay. There's all kinds of tools. Loom is one of the tools I use to record what's going on my screen. And it can be really easy to document. And you don't even have to make it a big production. It can just be something like, okay, here's how I draft this motion. This is how I file something. So document those processes.
Yeah, I agree. I love Loom as well. I use that a lot. So a Scribe is the one I've kind of come into recently that I've looked into a little bit more too.
Yep, I like Scribe.
Yep. And so, yeah, let's get into some of these systems.
So a practice management software helps. A lot of new lawyers don't get practice management software because they think they're too small. They think it's not helpful. And I will say that the one piece of advice I have is get a practice management system from the beginning, because it's really easy to put clients in when you're slow. But when you start getting busy, going back and trying to add all the information is a real headache and not a time saver and not good for work-life balance. So having it all in one central system is great. Yeah, the workflows, get them set up. I know it takes time. You have to go through and figure out what you want your workflow to look like, but it's a one-time thing versus doing it the same way every time and wasting time each time to do it. So think of it as a one time I have to do this, maybe some evaluation later, instead of every time I have to do this, is how I look at it.
Yeah, I love that. And are there certain kind of workflows that you decide, which processes you write down then become a workflow? Or do you find that most of the processes you write down do become a workflow?
Most of the processes I write down become a workflow. So almost everything we have can be reduced to a workflow. It's just documenting it and making sure that it makes sense, like who's working on what, and is it being passed to them in the workflow so that things aren't getting hung up somewhere or it's not getting passed on. Yeah. And then reminders, all kinds of reminders are good. I kind of get annoyed sometimes with the calendar entries that pop up, but it's a good thing. I would miss meetings if I didn't have a reminder that pops up. And if you have any kind of neurodivergency like ADHD, reminders are where it's at. Like you need those reminders. I am ADHD and autism, and I have to have those reminders. So
I am the same way. If it doesn't exist in my calendar, if I don't get a reminder, it doesn't exist in the real world. So I can definitely get on board with that.
Yep.
And so we're going to kind of wrap the day and let's talk about these steps to find success.
Really key takeaways here is your balance does not have to look like anyone else's. Like I said, if you want to work on Saturdays from 9 to noon and not the rest of the week, then do that because that works for your schedule. Part of that is how you design your firm. So your balance is kind of up to you and it can look like whatever you want it to be. I have a saying, and I've seen it at other places too. I think a lot of therapists use it. To be clear is to be kind. A lot of people think that if they are creating boundaries and expectations, that is rude or that they'll be abrasive. To be clear with someone is to be kind to them because you're telling them what to expect from you. And as long as you live up to what those expectations are, it'll create a much better relationship with your firm and your personal life. This works in your marriage too, by the way. So be clear about what you want and what you expect, and that will be reciprocated back. Use technology. As I said earlier, make your client experience a work of art. It can be something that you're proud of and will create so much repeat business because everyone's like, oh my gosh, I hired this lawyer and it was so easy. Who says that? That's what we want to hear. And then delegate. You don't have to hire someone full time. Just start making a list of things that you do every day that could be delegated out. That's what I did. I sat down and made a list of 100 things I could delegate. And that's how I started delegating. So start delegating.
Fantastic. And I think one of the big questions is, how do you know any of this is working? And so I can say you won't unless you lean into some kind of reporting that really shows you where your work is paying off. And so, within PracticePanther, you have all kinds of reports that you can actually pull that are related to invoicing, contacts, matters, time and expense, and you can even kind of pull some of your custom reports utilizing tags and things like that. So there is a ton of just canned reports in there. And ultimately, they help you operate a little bit more efficiently. They help you allocate resources a little bit better. You can maintain that profitability a little bit more. And ultimately, you want to make these informed decisions. So just kind of the three I wanted to quickly call out are those productivity reports on how everybody is doing. Are they running behind pretty regularly? Are tasks constantly in the past due phase? How are those productivity reports coming along? The time and expense reporting is going to be really big, whether you are billing by the hour or flat fees, just to kind of better understand how you're spending your time. And then those marketing and ROI reports are just going to be really, really important to see, what's working the best, how you are spending your time, whether that is in business development or more on the marketing kind of campaign front, what's working. So that way you can continue to invest time in things that are working and remove things that really aren't moving forward. And so the last slide of the day, I want to give the tips back to Jen.
So our tips to get started: start small. It can be very overwhelming to say, okay, I need to do all of these things. Start small. And that's why I say identify one thing that really annoys you about your practice or makes your life difficult. I had a consultant who did this with me a few years ago, where on our monthly calls, she would say, okay, what's really bugging you? And how do we fix that one thing? And so start with that. Commit to using technology when it makes sense. I'm a huge ChatGPT fan. We could do a whole discussion on ChatGPT. But if there's a solution out there from a technology standpoint, use it when it makes sense, because it will put you leaps and bounds ahead of other firms that aren't using technology to the fullest extent. Take vacation days. What do you want to do before the end of the year? I was just telling Libby before we started, I have a 2-week cruise I leave for on Monday. If you need to use up your vacation days, start using them. You have to take days off. You have to give your brain a break. During my law firm days, I worked 6 to 8 weeks a year from a cruise ship because I could. So you can balance things out. You can get some work done and you can still be on a beach or on a cruise ship somewhere. And then your mindset, sometimes we just have to turn off our lawyer brains that says, I can't do something because that's not how it's always been done, or that's how it's always been done. So that mindset, feel free to ever give me a call if you're like, I can't do this because lawyers say I can't do this, because I will tell you to turn off your lawyer brain. So that's your tips to get started.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate your time here today, Jen. And for those of you still on the call, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in. We might have a moment or two yet. I would love it if you dropped in maybe in the chat, just a single word or a couple of words to describe your experience with us in the last hour. What'd you think about our conversation? And kind of would love to kind of get your feedback on that. And then just kind of wanted to let you know, here in front of you, you'll have a couple QR codes. For us, it's a demo to kind of better understand what PracticePanther is all about and how it could really work for your firm. And then Jen has a special one as well, I think she'll want to talk about.
Yeah, so I always say that the secret to cash flow and to building up law practice as a business is charging for what you do. And so I do have a secret to charging for consultations webinar that's out there that's available. And that's one of my favorite things to talk with lawyers about, is how can you charge more for what you're doing.
Fantastic. And I did have a couple things come in. We will be sending, I won't have a transcript, but we can send the PowerPoint slide deck out with our recording. So that's no problem at all. And we'll be sending that recording out tomorrow. And then we do have, I think, a really good one. How do you balance the needs of your firm with the demand for kind of flexible work hours, staff in different time zones and things like that? Do you have one last consideration before heading out?
Communication. You have to talk through what that looks like for what they need. Sometimes a lot of firms are doing core hours, where they have core hours that people are going to be there, that commit to being there, but they're flexible for other times. So a lot of it's communication, and then design. Like, you have to design and be intentional about how you set your firm's expectations and work hours.
Fantastic. Well, let me have a thank you. It looks like people have enjoyed the presentation, so I appreciate that. Any tips on building the dream team? especially finding part-timers. You know, I think leaning into that bar association networks, I am impressed with how connected your bar association is. So that's definitely my one-off piece. And I'm sure Jen maybe has one other.
So I'll say put out into the universe if that's what you're looking for. That's always helped me. Put it on LinkedIn that you're looking for something. Whenever you talk, if someone says, how can I help you with your practice? Tell them what you're looking for, because the more you put it out there, the more people will be looking for your solution. So
fantastic. And that kind of, I know we're a little over time, and I appreciate everybody really staying late with us, asking questions, dropping in comments and things like that. That really means a lot to us. Make sure we're on the right path. Do reach out, Libby Luff Libby Funky Luff on LinkedIn. I still use my maiden name there. Jen Lee, she's on LinkedIn as well. Please reach out to us, connect with us. We'd love to stay connected and hear what you're up to.